Co-founders for businesses are scams, and here's why. I was talking with someone today about what they wanted to do with their life. They were telling me about how they dreamed to be an entrepreneur. And I said, well, what are you waiting for? She told me, well, first, I need to get a technical co-founder so that I can help develop the thing that I want to build. And I started thinking about this in my experience working with companies and founders, and I realized the whole idea of a co-founder is a scam. With that said, a lot of people can start businesses with people who are around since the beginning or even successfully have a co-founder, but most of the time it's a scam. If you do the math and you think about how much it costs to hire somebody overseas, cheap labor to develop an app or to do this work that you otherwise would have done yourself, it actually is a lot cheaper over time if you pay them upfront an hourly rate, a salary, whatever it may be, than if you gave away the profits in the future and eventually had to split what you sell the business for. Think of a co-founder as a marriage. This is someone that you're going into that you give them equal say to, you share everything with, and if you guys get a divorce, you have to pay them alimony for all the work that you're doing because they still own half the business even after they leave. Now let me take a step back and define what is a co-founder. Because you can have people around when you start the business that aren't necessarily co-founders. A co-founder, how I'm defining it, is someone that you give significant decision-making power and ownership to when you start a business. Now you can have people who are early employees and even some early employees who get small pieces of equity. However, at the end of the day, if you are the person making decisions, if you are the person with the majority share, then you are the founder and they are early employees. It's better to be on your own, and here's why. When I say on your own, I don't mean without people supporting you and helping you, but when I talk about being on your own, it's in terms of ownership. So if you're in charge, if you're a dictator and a competent dictator, it's much more effective than splitting your vision between someone else who has totally different ideas and constantly getting into arguments and never getting things done as quickly or as effectively as you would do on your own. Sure, you'll probably make mistakes, maybe even more mistakes than if you didn't have a co-founder. But at the end of the day, you'll make the mistakes faster and a lot cheaper, and when you do get it right, you get all the upside. So let's say you don't have a lot of money, but you want early employees. What can you do? Instead of giving them half the business, what you can do is motivate them with a really strong and powerful vision. Have a reason behind your business. People love becoming part of something that is bigger than themselves, that serves a higher purpose. You can find really good talent overseas for pretty small fees, and they'll work hourly without full-time commitments. So you can pay them as you go, as you can afford it. Over time, you can incrementally increase how much you pay them. And if they do really, really good, throw them a profit share. That way they can actually be fully incentivized to make money as the business makes money, but they don't get the ownership. Another really interesting thing about motivating employees as opposed to co-founders is that with an employee, you can constantly move them up the ladder. You constantly give them the feeling of growth. A co-founder starts with half, and all of a sudden they feel entirely entitled to everything. They think things aren't fair, they want their opinions heard, but at the end of the day, they could have been much happier themselves if they started with less and grew over time. Profit shares are a much better way to incentivize employees, and here's why. First of all, it can change over time. You can change the amount that you decide to pay somebody. Equity gets onto this thing called the cap table, which is a ledger that shows how much is owned by somebody, and you can't really change that. Maybe you can bring on somebody else who invests in the company and dilute them, but you dilute yourself as well. And the thing is that if you sell the company, you have to give them their share of whatever you sold the business for. In a profit share, you give them the share of the operational profits and they do not participate in the upside. Now, even though I think that the whole idea of a co-founder can be a scam for some, it's not really a scam for everyone. So who should look for a co-founder? Well, let's say that you don't have any particular skills or a particularly good idea. You could be a great candidate for someone who could be the beneficiary of all the upside that comes with becoming a co-founder. Go out, find people with really good ideas, really good talent who feel overwhelmed and need help. Go and try to help them and become a co-founder of what they're doing. If you also have no money and you don't have the skills to get this off the ground yourself, then go out and find a co-founder. And finally, if you put serious thought into the risk-reward ratio of bringing on a co-founder, you may have the money, you may be able to do a lot yourself, but you have someone who's extremely talented, you're aware of the upside, you're aware of the downside, then in that case, with a lot of thought, a lot of careful calculation, it may make sense for you. And you have to realize that if you're investing cash into an employee, that the majority of businesses actually fail. So you're taking a huge risk with your money. By bringing someone on, you don't have to pay them, and they get upside in the business. You take less of a risk up front, but more of a risk down the line if it does succeed. So how do you avoid this scam? First of all, do what you can by yourself. Some things may seem difficult or overwhelming, but I think you'll be surprised about what tools exist today to make things easier for people to get started in business. Second of all, leverage cheap overseas talent if you can. If you have the money to do it, I highly recommend finding someone extremely talented. I've actually experienced myself where I've tried to hire people and I've explored co-founders, and a lot of the people that you work with in the beginning can be really, really disappointing. You think they're going to be really good, and then over time, they just don't perform, or they don't put in as much work, or things change. I've been so glad that I haven't given away equity in that process, and that I've just kept things and hired and fired people until you go through and you find someone who's really good. And then once you find them, you can keep them on board and motivate them. So the third way to avoid this scam, do profit shares. You could get someone to even work for you for free in the beginning if they're willing to see the vision and work for a future profit share once the thing gets going. That way they get the upside as if they're an owner without entering the ownership. You can end it when you want and they don't participate in the upside. Next, there's two financial solutions that actually do require you to give up ownership without the same risks as a co-founder. There are friends and family giving you money in order for a piece of the pie, and then there's also angel investors. Venture capitalists are probably going to be much more structured, less likely to give you their money, and have a lot more hooks involved. But with friends and family and angel investors, you can take small amounts of money for small amounts of your business early on, and then use that money to go out and hire people, and they don't get a say in the decision-making and day-to-day operations of the business. And finally, the highest risk one in terms of short-term cash flow, but the lowest risk in terms of ownership and upside, is taking out debt. If you take out debt, which I would only recommend for things that have incredibly high certainty, this could be a bank loan, a credit card, that gives you full ownership in what you do and access to capital, but you take on a lot of risk. There's a lot of downside, there's interest payments, sometimes there's monthly payments, and this is a situation where you really don't want to dig yourself in a hole, so I wouldn't recommend that for anyone unless you have a 100% confidence in the return on investment from that money. So get your hands dirty, find cheap talent, find early employees, and avoid this scam. But if you do find yourself needing a co-founder, feel free to give me a call and I'll happily take half your business. Thanks guys, and good luck.